Hey there. Welcome to the DIY Musician Live. Hey, Anna.
Hey, Chris.
Thank you all out there for joining us. And what we're going to be talking about today is how to get the most out of your next release, whether it's a single or an EP or a full LP. You're worked on it for a long time. You've put a lot of money into it, maybe, and you're only going to get one chance to put it out there into the world. So do it right. If you send it to us today at CD Baby, we could probably get it up by Friday. But why do that? Why rush when, if you just hold your horses a little bit, you get way more out of our service, way more out of whatever window you give yourself to do promotion, all that kind of stuff. So that's what the conversation is going to center around today. And Anna can introduce herself in a second, but I just want to make sure if you have questions about anything on this topic, let us know. Leave a Facebook comment, and we'll try to get to that. But so Anna, you want to say hey?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Anna. I'm the Director of Customer Service for CD Baby, and I've been with the company since 2004. So I've been around a long time, and we have a team of 40 people on the CD Baby side who are helping you get your releases ready, and you might have talked to them if you called or emailed or chatted us. And really, we see a lot of releases come through great with a lot of planning and thought, but we also see plenty that come through that are maybe rushed a little bit. There's this feeling of anticipation and excitement that happens, when you have worked really hard on something. I think the instinct is it's done. It's got to be available right now. And we're here to tell you that that's probably not a great idea for a couple of reasons. And there's a lot of things you can do kind of leading up to the release that can help make sure that when you do decide to release it, that it's released in a really thoughtful way with all the pieces in motion that you kind of need for it to be really successful.
So I've been that person before. I've put out a lot of music through CD Baby. I've done, the album where I've had 6 months lead time and gotten a publicist involved and all the planning and stuff. And then I've been that guy that's like, I got my master's back. I want it live by Friday, and called Griffin, who hopefully will be joining us later in this conversation to, get it rushed to Spotify. And so that leads me to my first question. Is there a right way to release music in 2018?
I think for me that there are some right things that apply across the board to every release and should be considered all the time. Those things being, make sure your name is spelled right on your artwork. Make sure when you enter your information in the metadata, it's right. Google your name before you get artwork made. This is a big one, and we should pause to talk about it because I hope we're not jumping too far ahead, but oftentimes you think of a band name, right? And you've been practicing with this band, you're going to put out an album, and then it gets to deliver to iTunes, and you realize that there are other bands with that same name. And that's a real bummer for an artist because it's very difficult for partners to separate bands that have the same name from, to appear on their own pages and that sort of thing. So I would highly recommend, if you're in the kind of forming stages, that you make sure you Google your name. And if there are other bands with that name, you might consider changing it. And if it's an individual, if you're a singer-songwriter and you're performing, or a duo, I would Google that as well and just make sure that, there's a lot of John Smiths out there. There's actually an Anna Held who's very famous. And I'm Anna Held and I'm not very famous. So, I wouldn't want to use that name. I might go by my middle name, or I might choose, nom de plume, as it were, for my artist name.
Yes. So I guess we did jump ahead a little bit. That's the music's already out there. Let's assume the music's already out there, and then you realize that you share the same name with 3 other people. What do you do at that point? Is there a way to get Spotify to separate them out into some?
The answer to that is difficult because technically, sort of, we can make a request to our partner sites to separate the artists, and that happens frequently, but some partners will do it and some partners won't do it at all. They don't have a mechanism with which to do it. So we recommend avoiding that problem altogether by just making sure your name is unique to you. But we have had success with some partners, some of the bigger ones especially. Spotify's harder. It's just hard. Some partners just aren't set up the same way. So I would say, save yourself that heartache, especially because the hardest thing is you've already put the music out there at that point. You probably have a release date. You probably have a party. You've told all your friends. And it's embarrassing to have your music out there on the wrong profile on Spotify or iTunes. And there's a way to avoid that happening. So I think an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure and all that. And I would highly recommend taking those extra steps in the planning process to make sure.
Sure. Okay. So you mentioned the planning process. So let's go back to that and say that you've just got the masters back for your music. Uh, what do you need to set your goals, I guess? Because it seems like the timeline you need for planning is all dependent on what your goals are. If you have a national tour booked and you want to get press for all of that, you're going to need a giant window. But conversely, you could just have no music out there and you just want to get something out so you can kind of start the ball rolling. How do you set the goals even for what you should be looking into for budgeting and all that stuff?
I think you need to first determine what your goal is for the release. So if it's a single and you're coming up, putting the single out ahead of this album that you're releasing in the summer or something, you might want to think about getting the single out to outlets that might give you some press or something. You might consider it also depends a lot on your genre. So if you're playing for an audience who only goes to coffee shops to listen to live music, then you should probably think about that being part of your release plan. If you're a rock and roll act, you probably want to think about playing gigs at places where people who go see rock and roll go, and petitioning the right places to get your music available on, local rock radio. If this is a national release, though, if you really want national press, I think having a publicist is really important, because CD Baby does all the work for distribution. We do all the work for collecting your royalties and your sales, but we don't do that sort of promotion for most albums. We do have a team that deals with sort of high profile artists who are putting a lot of money and thought into their release and have their act together in a real serious way. And they do some promotional placement, but really that's up to you. So if you aren't prepared to do that yourself, I think partnering with a publicist is really valuable for sure.
Mm-hmm. And I guess another kind of fundamental definition of your goals is, do you want to make money? Do you want to not make money in lieu of getting your music out there into, as many ears as you can, building your family? There's a lot of different ways of having grand goals as well. And it seems like, if you're trying to maximize your revenue, maybe it is about driving people to download stores or physical product as opposed
that's a great
to
question too. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that's a great question too, because are you going to make CDs? Are you going to make a physical product to sell at shows or on the store.cdbaby.com site or on Amazon? A lot of people aren't making physical CDs anymore. And in some cases, they're losing an opportunity, I think, to reach some fans who are there's some trepidation about streaming and downloads. And depending on your audience, you should know your audience. And if there are people who like to purchase CDs, then I highly recommend making them. And having us sell them for you or selling them yourself. But then there's this whole question of, how do you want people to consume your music too? So there's the traditional, download from iTunes or download from Amazon or Google. But streaming is a big deal. And I think that there's a lot of artists out there who still are really kind of nervous about the idea of streaming because they get the sales reports, right? And the revenue that you make from streaming is really low. It's fractions of a penny for every listen. But as a consumer, for myself, I only consume music through streaming until I like it enough to buy it. And then I'll buy it. But I want to listen to it first a couple of times to make sure I want to buy it. And I think that's true of a lot of consumers. And we're getting to this point now in the industry where streaming revenue is actually going to eclipse download revenue pretty soon, probably within a year or two.
And for songwriters, the royalty rate was just mandated to go up quite significantly for on-demand streaming in the US. So,
yep.
Okay, well, so let's say someone's defined their goals and now they want to get the music to us, to any distributor, but hopefully CD Baby.
Hopefully.
What do they need to sort of collect on the, on the side of just getting it through the distribution process? What information, what sort of files, all that sort of stuff?
So you want to start out with really, really good audio. So, and by really good, I mean audio that you're really happy with. So recordings and mixes that you've listened to thoroughly, that you're completely happy with putting out in the world. I tell people all the time that we don't have a magic button, and there's nothing that we can do when it gets here to make it sound any better than it sounds when it gets here.
Do you have a this sucks button?
No, I don't have a
okay.
I don't have a this sucks button. But so I would say focusing on the audio first, because obviously that's the art. That's what we're getting out in the world. That's the part of yourself that you're sharing with your fans, making sure that that's really solidly representative of what you want to put out there. We need cover artwork, and every piece of cover artwork that we put out has to be unique. Meaning, if you've put out a single, to promote an album, the covers have to be different in some way. They can be similar, but they have to be different in some way. And we need all the metadata. And the metadata is a big deal. And in the industry right now, it's even a bigger deal because it has a lot to do with how well we can collect royalties on your behalf. And by metadata, I mean all of the text that comes along with the album or the EP or the single. So having all of the songwriters, composers, any publishers, if any of the songwriters have publishing deals, the splits between the songwriters, all of the kind of copyright information. And a lot of times if you're self-publishing, that's you or it's the band. And making sure you have all of that information ahead of time. It's really good also, and we can talk more about this, but having a bio is really good. So having a really well-written bio is a great idea. We take a bio when you submit through CD Baby, and then you can use it on your website, and you can use it on your Facebook profile, and you can use it in your various social media presences, but really having a solid narrative is good. And that's really all you need to start with CD Baby. So you can, if you have all your tracks, you have your metadata, and you have your art, we can start working for you.
Yeah, and one thing that goes along with the metadata isn't just text; it's numbers too. So it'd be the UPC and also the ISRC code, which is a unique identifier for individual tracks. And those are important because let's say you put something out as a single, and then it's going to appear later on an album. You can keep the ISRC code consistent across both of those appearances of the song, and then when your album comes out, suddenly it's sort of carrying with it this song that already has a play count. Which can help you. On that topic, you were mentioning bios and sort of your pitch or the thing that's going to make you unique and set you apart, which I feel like is Griffin's area of expertise here. So I'm going to bring him into the conversation.
Oh, cool.
1 second. There he is. Hey.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, can you hear us okay?
I can hear you guys. Is my microphone working?
It is.
All right, awesome.
Do you want to say who the heck you are?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Sorry I'm late. Make sure to get your Outlook inbox time zone changed when accepting meeting invites, as I'm learned today. Anyways, my name is Griffin. I work for the Label Services Department, which I think we're calling CD Baby Plus at this time. It's kind of dealing with some of our priority releases and helping give information about those releases to our digital partners, giving some info about, if there's going to be a media campaign around these releases, and if so, who to contact, and if those partners decide to place it on a playlist or on a new release slider, giving additional information, stuff like that.
Cool. So we were just talking about kind of the basic stuff you need before you can distribute your music, getting together the metadata, the publishing information about the songs, having artwork, having good audio files. Once they've uploaded that stuff, another mistake I think that people make a lot when they're in a rush is they don't click on some really important checkboxes for the services that we use, or check all of the various places we distribute music to. So do you guys want to just talk a little bit about maybe the things that can get overlooked if you're just rushing something to iTunes?
I think from my perspective, the thing that people forget a lot is our content ID and sync licensing programs. They're sort of an afterthought in the submission flow process because they're not necessary for distribution, but it makes a big difference, especially if you have people covering your songs, or if you've posted a lot of videos on YouTube, we can monetize those for you and pursue sync licensing opportunities in commercials, TV, movies, those sorts of things. So I would say making sure that you're definitely signed up for sync licensing if that's something that's important for you and your music. And then also, I think really understanding what CD Baby Pro Publishing can do for you. If you haven't investigated that for yourself, it makes a lot of sense to do it, especially if you've put out original material and you're the songwriter. We can just collect these mechanical royalties and other sorts of royalties that you wouldn't be collecting otherwise, and it makes a lot of sense to do that.
Yeah, well, so to clarify that point, there's generally two different kinds of copyrights that are being used when someone streams or listens to music. There's the recording of a composition, and then there's the underlying song. And if you've written the song, then you could, if you've also, produced your own music, earn from both of those copyrights. So CD Baby, as your as your distributor would be paying you for the master sound recording side of things. CD Baby Pro Publishing would be collecting for you on the songwriter side of things. So that's really a worthwhile thing that people often overlook.
I think kind of building off that a little bit in a different direction is keeping track of your ISRCs. If you want to make sure that the ISRC for your singles matches the ISRC for the version of that same song if it's on an album that's going to come out later. That way the play counts will match up. And even think about having a single. Think about doing a pre-order. And if you do a pre-order and have an instant gratification track, release that same song as a single to other companies and try to divide and conquer amongst all people who are on different platforms.
Can you back up and just maybe explain a little bit more of the basics of pre-orders and pre-saves?
Sure. So, yeah, I'm sorry about it.
Yeah, no worries.
I think one thing that we deal with a lot in our department, or just at CD Baby in general, is when artists finish a song, they want to get it out into the world as soon as possible, but they can really kind of dull the impact that they would have with that release if they would have kind of built anticipation over a longer period of time. And that's really where pre-orders come in. Allowing people to purchase your music without getting it instantly really does build an anticipation. And it allows them to talk about the release before they can even get their hands on it. Having an instant gratification track, which you can do when signing up your album in your CD Baby account. It allows you to have kind of two release dates: the date that instant gratification track is out, and then the date that the album becomes available to people who have pre-ordered it. So thinking about releasing your music as something kind of down the road as opposed to something that's immediate, I think is something that's really kind of starting to become more popular, and we're seeing a lot more musicians take advantage of using that extra time to build anticipation rather than wanting to just get something out as soon as possible.
Well, and I look at it, it's not just building anticipation, but if you're, let's say you're going to share your album cover or something, I won't say it's a wasted tweet or a wasted Facebook post, but it's going to have a lot more impact if it's accompanied by a link that says, hey, by the way, pre-order my album, you'll get it in a month or whenever the release date is. And suddenly you have an ability to actually drive a sale or a save in the case of Spotify.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then
go ahead.
So
go ahead.
I was just going to say, when that day arrives, the release date, suddenly all of the sales that have led up to that are counted as first day sales, which helps your charting ability on Spotify. If you've had people pre-save the song, then it's dropped into their song queue, and that's going to help you with your first day, streaming spike, which might attract the interest of Spotify's algorithm. So all those things are making more of an impact on that first day.
And what I was going to say about that I live on the logistical kind of operation side of things. And one of the things that you have to keep in mind if you're doing a pre-sale is that we can't do it unless you've given us at least 30 days before your release date. And that doesn't mean signing up 30 days before your release date. That means giving yourself a window of time before. So let's say we did this when we did this discussion at the conference and the dates got really funky. But let's say you want to do a release on January 1st. Let's just say January 1st. You need to set up your pre-sale by December 1st, which means you really need to sign up with CD Baby by like November 20th or something. So give yourself a solid 6 weeks, because anything can happen. If your audio gets uploaded and it's corrupted, or if there's some maintenance on one of our partner sites, or who knows what could
Or in
happen.
the case that you mentioned, it's the holidays.
Or it's the holidays, exactly.
Delays.
Side note, don't put out a Christmas album in November. Just don't do that. But
Guilty.
But what you really need to do is think, kind of reverse engineer in your mind. So if you know that you're releasing on January 1st, what do you need to do 4 weeks ahead of time, 6 weeks ahead of time, 8 weeks ahead of time? Really thinking that through before you make the whole plan, because any piece of it could make some other piece break. And really having a good, clear idea, write it down, talk about it with somebody else, make sure that you've really understood kind of what your goals are. So if you sign up with CD Baby in November and you tell us you want us to do a pre-sale on iTunes, we have plenty of time to get that set up for you. On December 1st, we can make that pre-sale available a month ahead of your release. Something that happens to probably all of us on this discussion frequently is an artist will tell us, a friend or somebody we meet, hey, my album's coming out in a month, you should buy it. Well, guess what happens? 5 minutes after I walk away, I've forgotten because I'm busy, and I might really want to buy that album. But if I can't buy it right now, that is completely, and I will say wasted. It's a wasted opportunity because that person was interested in you right at that moment. They might have bought your album right then, and you don't have a way for them to do that. So, Griffin, you mentioned these other artists that are sort of doing this kind of long release plan. A great example was Beyonce's album, Beyonce, a couple of years ago, where it just dropped out of nowhere. And it was just this big splash in the media. No one knew it was coming. But trust me when I tell you there was months and months of planning ahead of that release. And everybody on the planning and logistics side have been working on that. And so it might seem instantaneous from a consumer point of view, but there was a lot of work behind it. And so that's something I think that a lot of artists forget, that it's not called the music business for nothing. And there's a lot of work involved on the artist part. It's hard. It's not an easy thing. It's not a flash in the pan.
And I don't know if you mentioned this yet, but the pre-saves are good for iTunes, Amazon, and Google Play. Do they do one?
Pre-sales, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And
yes.
then, okay.
And Spotify for pre-sales, yeah.
Right.
And even to mention, you mentioned that Beyonce album, not even for something like that, it's not even just work ahead of time. It's negotiation, honestly, with each one of these companies to get around the rules that they've set for themselves. And these are all rules that they've set for themselves based upon data. If you submit an album to CD Baby and an inspector comes back and says, this is not going to fly with our digital partners, it's not any sort of aesthetic choice. It's based upon them getting the information and saying, we know that if this album has this content, no one's going to buy it. It's not going to sell, and it's going to be a drain on our servers to host it. And taking that same kind of philosophy to like a macro level, building a plan and having that pre-sale is going to make your music more attractive to a digital partner, to iTunes, to Spotify, to anybody, because they're going to look at your music and say, okay, this artist has a plan. They're probably doing something during this pre-sale period, probably going on tour, probably playing some shows, probably getting some merch together. It makes yourself look more attractive to interested parties that you may not have thought were considered before. Just by having a plan and by extending the time between your music is finished and the music is available to people in any way that you can really make it just look more attractive. I know it sounds kind of weird, but it's something that we've had a lot of success with, and a lot of companies, music sales companies, kind of built around that philosophy of trying to extend the life of a release.
Well, so you're talking about what is attractive to these retail and streaming platforms. Part of your job is to kind of find and then articulate what should be attractive to those platforms. So I wonder, can you talk a little bit about what you're looking for in artists? Do they need to be touring? Do they have to have a video? What sales metrics or any of that kind of stuff, just to give a framework for that?
Absolutely. And I think we're from information that I've gotten from people at Spotify or Google Play or wherever, we're kind of at a really interesting place within the music industry, that there's a lot of newfound focus on independent musicians, because with the accessibility of recording software and music gear, it's easier than ever to make music. It's easier than ever to release music. Music fans are becoming a lot more sophisticated, and companies like Spotify want to be the place where you went and you found this artist that no one else has heard of, but they make the music that you love and feels like it's made just for you. And if Spotify could serve you that artist on a playlist without you having to like dig through everything to find it, they feel like you will love them for life. So that's their main goal, is to unearth music and serve it to their listeners that matches up with them. So they don't really care if the music is coming from a major label or a distributor or, you know, wherever. It's about the artist themselves. So to make the first thing to make yourself more attractive is to make the best music you possibly can. I know that sounds kind of, you know, trite, but it's true. Like, the first thing you want to do is like make the best music you can. Like, take the extra time to get it mastered at somebody who is the best mastering person in town. Like, take the, you know, work an extra couple shifts, and I know because I've done this, work an extra couple shifts to get like the deluxe disc packaging that you want, that fits the vision, instead of getting slipcases because it's cheaper, but it won't match the artwork that you have in mind. Like, really, you know, make the best possible music you can, because people notice the amount of care that goes into music. Like, now that music software is so accessible, like, the one thing that people really are noticing is care. Like, do you actually care about making this? So number one, make the best music you can, and then be dedicated to showing that music to people, because Spotify and iTunes, they will go and look at everyone's, you know, YouTube page. They will go and look at your Facebook page, because they want to know, if I put your song on this playlist and then I tweet on this, you know, on the Spotify Twitter to millions of people, we just added this song to this playlist. Are you going to go on your Twitter and retweet that? Are you going to tweet a link to this playlist saying, I just got added to this, everybody go check it out and follow this playlist now? Are you going to promote them through your social media or your promotional channels if they're trying to promote you? If not, if you're not the kind of person who ever tweets links to anything, if you don't seem excited about your releases and use your social media to try to push that excitement, then a company's not going to be excited about promoting you. And those are the two like biggest things that we try to start with, is like, are you just kind of throwing this music together and just kind of getting it out there to get it out? Or do you really care about this music, and are you making the best possible package that you can? And then number two, are you going to promote, you know, something were to happen, are you going to promote it as much as the other side is going to promote you?
Yeah. And I think being prepared to do that, is important with Spotify to be a verified artist on Spotify. Make sure you've got a Spotify artist account, which you can do. You can get instant verification through CD Baby. So it's not, you know, a big deal, but it is something that's important if they're going to, you know, consider featuring your music somehow. On the Apple side of things, there's Apple Connect, you know, Pandora Amp. There's these sort of somewhat marketing platforms or customization platforms on these services that you should absolutely claim your account and do whatever you can to, you know, put pictures on your profile. It's pretty easy to do, but a lot of times you go to someone's music on Spotify and it's just the blank header, and the equivalent of the Twitter egg. Yeah. It's a bummer. It shows that you don't care.
You know, it's interesting. When we had our DIY musician conference in Nashville this year, I heard one of our artists, Tyke T, speak about sort of self-promotion. He's done a really great job at promoting himself. And he said something that stuck with me, and it still has stuck with me, is, you know, don't expect that anybody's going to work harder for your music than you are. So the amount of work you put in is visible to other people. And if you're not putting the work in, they're not going to match you, and they're certainly not going to exceed the amount of work you're putting in. And it was really, I mean, that was just that one simple statement of, don't expect anybody to work harder for your music than you are. It's like, oh, everyone should hear that, because it's so true. And there's so many things you can do that are easy. And, you know, just kind of keeping an eye and understanding. I mean, one of the things that's interesting, once music is out there, we provide you, and Spotify for Artists provides you with a ton of analytics on, you know, we have trending reports, so you can log into your CD Baby account and see how many streams you've got, how many downloads you've got from Apple Music, from iTunes, from Spotify. And where they're from, where those people are from. So maybe you think that you're really popular in New York, but turns out you're not, but you're really popular in Indianapolis. Well, guess what? If you're going to buy ads somewhere, you should buy ads in Indianapolis because people in Indianapolis like you. Don't buy ads in New York City if no one there likes you, right? So there's all these ways that you can sort of use the information that you have, I think, to get a better result. But none of that is going to make any difference if you haven't planned it out well and if you haven't taken that time and been thoughtful about the release. And it's just, you know, for me, I'm a photographer, not a musician, so it's different for me, I'm sure. But there is this other idea of editorializing yourself that I wanted to mention. So when you're planning a release, when you're putting an album together, let's say you wrote 20 songs, maybe you recorded 15 of them. The odds are all 15 probably shouldn't go on the album. They probably aren't all as good as you think they are, or they probably don't all go together as a cohesive album. But if you don't care, if you're just releasing a bunch of singles, it doesn't matter. But knowing for yourself, if when you put out an album, if it's supposed to tell a story, is it an experience that you want your fans to have listening to this album all the way through? And if that's important to you, then make sure you're not writing a bunch of songs that don't go together. Make sure that as you're writing songs that tell a story, tell your story. But if you're putting out a bunch of singles, do whatever you want, but just know what you're doing and don't accidentally end up putting out a bunch of random songs together as an album that don't really go, because fans can tell, you know?
Yeah, and I think the same editorializing mentality and seeking outside input on something like your bio or your press release is important too. You know, just, you know, write a 20-page thing and then have someone you trust read it and pull out the best 3 sentences, you know, like get other people's feedback before it's out there in the world. I had a question. So Tyke T recommends you work as hard as you can because no one else is going to work harder. Let's say someone is willing to put in the work. They haven't put out the music yet, and they're getting kind of like their promotional checklist in order. What would that include? Press photos, videos? What do you feel like is the bare minimum these days that, or actually we shouldn't go minimum. They're willing to work, so let's do maximum. What should they do?
You know, I really, if you're willing to go maximum, I think that one thing that you would want to consider would be physical product in a somewhat specialized or unique format, meaning like a CD, signed CDs, or vinyls with a download code, or you know, there's a rapper here in Portland where, you know, he sells those little the e-cigarette pens with a USB charger, and when you plug the USB charger into your computer, it loads his music and his videos. Like, yeah, you know, thinking outside, something that you can give to somebody that is outside the box, that also has your music, is something that I think is really, really important, really unique, and really, really valuable these days. People kind of have, music listeners really seem to have the impression that musicians don't get paid through their sales. Now, I say that they have this impression because musicians never really got paid through their sales. So it's kind of funny to think that like now it's so much worse. But the point being that having a physical thing to sell to somebody and having a special physical thing to sell to somebody really makes them feel like they're supporting you, they're supporting your vision, your art, that they're taking something special. And even if it's something as simple as a signed CD, it just has that little bit of extra, you know, little bit of extra care that people really seem to connect to. So can at least consider, you know, if it doesn't work out, if you can't think of anything, that's fine, but definitely consider a physical product. And then, you know, I usually say to people, and it sounds like really like Dale Carnegie, old school or something, but try to imagine what your target listener is. Like, who is your like perfect listener? Like, who is going to love you and your music and your whole everything? Like, who is going to be your just fanatic? Like, what do they look like? Where, you know, where do they shop? Where do they go? What kind of food do they eat? Like, well, who is that person? And then if you can identify who that person is in your mind, then try to find them. And then if you can find them, try to get them your music. And that can be, you know, something as simple as, okay, I think people would be at this store. So go to that, you can go to that store and be like, how do you do the music? Who plays the music in your store? You know, there's all sorts of different ways to try to connect to those people, but you have to try to figure out who that person is if you're really trying to find out who you're going to connect with. So those are the two things I think to really kind of at least consider when putting together a release package, because you're going to want to have a promotional plan. And, you know, if you're going to want to promote your release, you know, you need to know who you're going to promote it to. It's, you know, if you're going to buy commercial airtime, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to go to a company who can tell you, like, where are my demographics? Like, you know, like Andy was saying, in New York or Indianapolis.
And the most frustrating thing is to think you're going to put out your music and the entire world is going to fall in love with it. That's ridiculous. And you're going to set yourself up for disappointment and insanity. Whereas if, like you're saying, you define who your audience is and then you can verify that your assumptions are true, suddenly your options are limited in such a great way. Like whether it's Facebook targeting ads or what venues to play or even whether you should do Spotify or vinyl records, like all of that will kind of be decided or fall more into place.
Right.
I think that the limiting your options by defining who your fan base is, as an independent musician, you have limited resources, right? Most of us don't have unlimited funds, and we certainly don't have unlimited time. And so really focusing your energies in one or two places that will really make a difference for you, I think is a great idea. You asked about like headshots and band photos and that sort of thing. I recommend not taking a photo in your bathroom with your cell phone. We see a lot of those, and I highly recommend you get somebody else to take the picture for you.
Do they have ropes
but
on?
Also, sometimes they're like brushing their teeth. I mean, you know, it just depends. But I think, again, it's that care piece. It's I want people to feel like I'm a legitimate artist. I need to put the work in that presents that persona, right? I hang out in my robe all the time, and that's fine, but I wouldn't put that out as my publicity photo because that's not what I want people to know about me. Now, if my music are, you know, like lullabies for my dogs or whatever, maybe the robe is the right wardrobe, but take some time, think about what you want to put out there, get a decent photo taken, write that good bio, get some feedback on it. I think having a press release is good if you know how to get a press release out there. And if you don't, maybe don't worry about a press release. The thing I think there's this opportunity too that, you know, a lot of folks are just not as comfortable with, and that's social media, knowing how to use social media to really promote your music and your brand, and having a reliable source. You know, if people are following you on Facebook and on Twitter and on Instagram, don't post once every 3 months. Set an alarm on your phone and post once a day, post once a week, post every Tuesday, whatever that looks like. But set a rhythm, because if you can post a new, even if it's just you talking about something like, hey, I put my album out last week and now I'm eating cereal. This is cool. Or like, hey, I saw this band last week. That's so great. Did you check out my album on Spotify? You put a 30-second video up every Tuesday. Your fans are going to wait for it. They're going to anticipate it. And then when you have more music to put out there, you've already got this built-in fan base that's watching you because they know every Tuesday or every day you're going to post something. So I think defining whatever your right rhythm is for social media and using that to your advantage, because it's you know, everybody's on social media all day long. So use that. You've got people waiting to find you.
Yeah. So to kind of back up again, one of the things I was thinking about, CD Baby offers all these other services, other in quote, they're monetization services in addition to distribution. And people rush through them, like you were mentioning, YouTube Content ID. We now are going to do Facebook Content ID, publishing royalty collection, all these things. And the reason why it's so crucial to do it now when your release is about to come out is because every release has a life cycle. And let me get my hands in this shot here. You know, when it first comes out, it's going to be make the biggest impact. It's going to have the most, generally, it'll have the most traction early on. And if you're not set up to collect whatever, you know, publishing royalties are happening because of that spike and all these things, then you're going to miss the biggest window to profit from these other monetization options that we have. So just mentioning that in review. And then I wanted to take... Did any of you have kind of closing thoughts before we take questions?
I think questions are good. Let's bring it on.
Yeah, cool. Absolutely.
So one person said, where does Sound Exchange come into all of this? Should CD Baby artists set up an account with them as well? Anyone want to feel that?
We always recommend to. Sound Exchange collects mechanicals from a couple places that I think we don't otherwise have access to. We have a good Help Center article. If you go to support.cdbaby.com, There's a Sound Exchange article that explains how Sound Exchange works. So I'd recommend reading through that. But I recommend any place that you can register that that isn't taking money for that privilege. We have seen artists get paid out from Sound Exchange, and we don't collect directly from them.
Yeah. So, I mean, to clarify, Sound Exchange collects a performance royalty that's not a publishing royalty. It goes to the label, the performer, the artist, not the songwriter. So it's a different kind of performance royalty. Here's an interesting one. How much theoretically can one expect to make on selling a CD with and without their own promotions? I
think
how
that's
much
a
can
deep
someone
question.
expect to make on selling a CD?
I think what they're saying is basically, what can I expect to happen when I put out a record? Am I going to make money?
Oh, maybe.
This is exactly why I wanted to ask it.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, because there is kind of an assumption that, hey, I've put this out in the world and people are going to magically find me. And that might be true, but oftentimes isn't. So if you've done all the work that we've been talking about before, where, you know, you've done the planning, you've done the promotion, you've gotten on social media, you've built your mailing list, you've got your fan base, you're playing shows, then yes, you'll make money. There is a delay that is hard to wrap your head around sometimes, with sales coming from digital partners in particular, and also publishing royalties. They don't happen in real time. So if your buddy buys your album on iTunes today, you aren't going to see that money for at least a month and a half. You won't see the sales report for a month and a half. We get reports every month, but it's for a month and a half ago, if that makes sense. So kind of getting your head around, there's not going to be an immediate inflow of cash into your account, even if tons of people are buying your music or streaming it. So it really varies. I mean, we have people who put out albums who make hundreds of thousands of dollars on those albums via sales, streaming, sync licensing, and all that combined. And we have people who don't make anything. And it just depends. Again, those people who are really successful, 14 years here, you see the people who work really hard are the ones who are really successful. And the people who put it out there in the world and sort of expect the tide to just carry their music out there aren't as successful. And that's the honest truth is, you know, if you put the work in, you're going to see sales. Might not be as many sales as you're wanting, but
work plus, does anyone want it? It's a simple question with a hard answer, but like, if people want it, then yeah, you have options for making money. If not, your job isn't to maximize your income on this release. It's to get people to want the next release or to want to give you money in whatever form you can.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're looking for a dollar amount, like I'm going to release this album and it's reasonable to, you know, in this genre, it's reasonable for me to make X amount of dollars in this time period. I think then that would be looking at it the wrong way. You know, the music industry, it's like, it is artistic, but it's also an industry, you know, art meeting commerce, and it has to be looked at as a build. I mean, all the groups or artists that we've worked with just here that have been very successful, a lot of them are artists that started with CD Baby and now are on major labels, and they're all people who looked at it in that way, looked at it as a way of, we're just going to keep getting better and better and bigger, and, you know, stopping to look at the dollar amount means that you're not continuing to move. So if you're looking for, I can expect this, if you're looking for an ROI on an artistic endeavor, it's just, that's where it's just not, you know, it is art meeting commerce, but there are some things that will never quite make sense. So there's no real dollar amount that anyone could give. It's just and if you're looking for,
I'm on the move. I'm sorry.
Do you want to
check out investing?
Yeah, I can stay on. I just moved.
Okay, cool.
This is how we roll at CD Baby.
Now we're in our lobby. You know, yeah, I'm the only one of us actually at CD Baby HQ.
So one last question I wanted to address is, what do you all think of windowing? Maybe I should say first what that is. That would be the idea that when you first put your music out, you're not going to put it on, say, Spotify or Apple Music. You're not going to put it on streaming places. You're going to drive people first to a download store or a physical place, and then you slowly add other options that maybe drive less revenue. What do you think of that as a strategy?
Real quick, I just saw two quick questions. Can I just answer them really quick?
Oh, go for it. Yeah.
I saw one person said, do you recommend using a PR firm? I recommend researching PR firms and, asking people in your area or in your same genre or people within your town. Have you worked with this firm? What do they do? Have you worked with this firm? Definitely research it. Definitely look into it. And if you find somebody who's trusted, who understands your project, and who is going to charge you something that you can afford, sure, it can't hurt. However, just here in Portland, that's why I wanted to say this, because here in Portland, there are a lot of people who will promise the moon and then will do nothing. And then when you go to them and say, what happened? They say, sorry, just nobody was really feeling it. Just we tried. So
that'll be $4,000.
Exactly.
Totally.
So I would definitely recommend look into it, ask around, because it could be great, but don't just throw money at it. Definitely double check. And then someone else was asking about, can you release music without a label? Yes, absolutely, because CD Baby can be what a label was before, or any distribution company can act as your label. What a label can do for you today is hopefully they promote your album and take a portion of your sales. But most independent artists are promoting themselves and don't pay someone else to do it. So, unlike kind of going back to the question before, a lot of the artists that we work with that are, our top sellers are people who pay for PR out of their pocket, rather than having a label do it and then take a piece of their sales. And you can hop in with Chris's question here. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay. I was going to say for the windowing question, I think that, it depends on what you're trying to do, right? If you want this to be easy, if you want it to be fast, if you want to just get the content out there, then I would say there's no need really to do that. Unless you have a really, really specific release plan where you're wanting to drive downloads first, you're wanting to sell physical product first. We've had artists who will do a pre-sale for physical CDs and then release the downloads and everything else later. And that's potentially a good strategy for you if you feel like you can handle all of the logistics and details of that. But frankly, to me as a consumer, that doesn't matter to me, but maybe I'm not your audience. And if you figure out who your audience is and those it goes back to that, like there's not one right way. There's probably a right way for you, and spending some time thinking about that and really knowing what you're trying to do first will sort of help you guide the rest of the decisions you make throughout the process.
And if you don't know your audience is certainly going to act the way you want them to act and go first buy your physical product, then I'd say it's probably a mistake to window, because you're probably just pissing off the few people that want your music right away. So why not make it available everywhere on the first day?
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I just have a couple announcements I was going to make. One, CD Baby has turned 20 years old this year.
What?
And to celebrate, we're going back to the pricing that we had in 1998, which back then it was just to take your CD and have a direct-to-fan order fulfillment service. And we've added all the other stuff we've talked about today, so it's a heck of a deal. To do, what's the website? members.cdbaby.com/promo. You can see the promo codes to get the discount for our original pricing. Another thing is we've launched an app in the App Store for iOS. It's called the DIY Musician. So check that out, and basically you can talk to us, you can talk to one another. It's a good place to share tips and find out more stuff about driving your own career. And there was a third thing I'm supposed to say. What is it? I'll think of it in time for the next broadcast. Oh, I know what it is. Show.co, which I think is related to a lot of the things we've talked about today. Show.co is a online music marketing tool that we offer to CD Baby clients for free. And it basically gives you a super easy way to create an attractive campaign online where you can get your fans to take a really specific action. That could be, watch a YouTube video. It could be, give me your email and I'll perform a stupid human trick, whatever. There's a lot of different options. Spotify saves, follow me on Spotify. So if you're a CD Baby artist, go into your members account and click the show.co link and make sure you get that started. Play around with some different campaign types, and definitely if you're putting out new music, go in there and play around so you can incorporate that into your release. I think that's all I wanted to say. You guys want to add anything?
No, I would just say a lot of the stuff we talked about, we cover on the blog. We've got a lot of tips on the blog. We also have a really great help center. All the articles are written by support folks here at CD Baby. So highly recommend checking that out if you're putting out a new release. There's a whole getting started section. We also have a get started guide in members. If you log in, it's on your main dashboard. You can download a PDF and it goes through everything you're going to need in detail and all the specs on the files. And we didn't get into that level of detail here today. So if you want all of that stuff spelled out for you, our design team did a great job putting that together. So I would absolutely check that out.
Cool.
The only thing I heard somebody say at a conference this year is Google is your friend, and they said it in a much meaner way. But what they were trying to say is, if you have a question or if you don't know, ask around. Ask CD Baby or ask some other musicians or something like that. You don't have to feel like you have all the answers to everything and then just go with it. There are resources out there and people you can talk to help make your art connect with people better. Because ultimately that's what everyone's trying to do, is trying to get their art to connect with people who will appreciate it. And that's where we come in, is helping get from point A to point B, because that's difficult. But Google is your friend. CD Baby is your friend. The world has a lot of answers. You just have to go out and get them.
Awesome. Well, thanks for getting on here and talking about all this with me. And
absolutely.
If you're watching, thanks for watching. And if you left a question that we didn't address, after this broadcast, I'll hop back on Facebook and try and go through those. So thanks a lot. See y'all.
Cool. Thanks, guys.